very much, Rabbi. Very excited to be here. Congratulations to all the seniors who are graduating. Very, very excited for you guys. Moving on to something very exciting in your lives. I hope you really take the time to enjoy all those friendships that you have and stay in touch with each other. I mean a lot. Definitely trying to stay in touch with each other. And I can tell you that one of the things that touched me the most and was the most tragic thing in my life was when one of my really good friends, who was in my Hebrew high school class, died a year after our graduation, while we were both freshmen in college. So take the time to enjoy your friendships and stay in touch with each other. It's so very important. Like the rabbi said, my wife Avery was sitting in one of these seats many years ago. She was bar mitzvah here with the rabbi who, when we first came back to Groton, everyone kept telling me about how when she during her bar mitzvah, walked away from the podium, like the first person ever to do that during her bar mitzvah.
She was an actress. She couldn't be confined to the lecture. She had a note.
She has not changed. So, like the rabbi said, my father-in-law was in the Navy. My father was an Air Force officer. My grandparents were both in the military during World War II. My dad's dad was an airplane mechanic in the Pacific, and my mother's dad was a dentist in Europe during the war there and helped liberate some of the death camps. And growing up from a very early time, I knew I wanted to serve just as my parents had served, as my dad had served and my grandparents had served. I knew I wanted to serve as well and defend our country because I thought there was something very special, and the freedoms we have here are very special. And so when I was 18 years old, I went to the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, where I studied, among other things, I studied history, but also ended up studying chemistry, electrical engineering, and a whole bunch of other important stuff there. And I did my thesis when I was there about the Jewish experience at the Naval Academy. It was something the rabbi there asked me to look at, and I ended up having Jewish people from the class of 1921, right, imagine how old that person was, writing to me and telling me about their experiences being Jewish at the Naval Academy at a time when they weren't even allowed to go to synagogue. It was a very, very, very humbling experience to learn about the challenges that the Jewish people had faced in the military, and also encouraged me in my service. And then after I graduated from the academy, I went to Ohio State University for 2 years, where I studied some more history, which did me absolutely no good when I went to study nuclear power a little bit later. But I earned my PhD in history while I was at Ohio State, and while I was there, I studied a little bit of Jewish history, and that also taught me a lot about how important it was that Jewish people take the time to serve in our country's great military. Since then, I've become a nuclear submarine officer. I was initially stationed in Guam, which is an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, on the USS Houston. While I was there, I got back together with my wife Avery, who I dated a few years previously. She swore that she would never date anyone in the Navy, and she would definitely never date a guy who's going to be in a submarine. But, a couple things changed. We got back together while my submarine was doing a shipyard availability in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, and she flew all the way out to Guam and joined me. And I'll tell you, any nice Jewish girl who will drop anything and come to Guam to join you is a keeper. So when you're thinking about criteria for marriage, well, that's a pretty good one right there. And then last year I came back, took Avery back to Groton, which is someplace she'd wanted to go. Got stationed here. I'm now the navigator on the USS New Mexico, which is a submarine that's based out of here. And I also had the privilege of being the navigator on the USS Missouri a few months ago when they needed a navigator very badly, so they grabbed me on a temporary assignment. How many of you have a parent who's in the military? Anyone in this group? All right. Not too many, right? There's actually 3 million Americans in our military. And you think to yourself, well, that's a lot of people, 3 million. But then you think to yourself, there's 310 million people in our country. So less than 1% of our entire country is in the military. And that includes both the active duty and the people in the reserves, and that can go up to age 60. All right? So it's not a very small group of people. They're all volunteers. They serve in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, and the Coast Guard. They're drawn from all races, all religions, and all sorts of backgrounds. When you serve in a military unit, you meet people from all over the country who have done all sorts of different things that you would never expect. Some of the jobs of people in the military are kind of normal jobs, where you work from about 6:30 to about 4:30 at night, work in an office, maybe you work in a repair shop. Some people work on ships and planes, some people work on tanks. And sometimes it's not a very normal job. Sometimes you go to really far away places, and sometimes you stay there for 6 to 12 months, maybe even longer. And yeah, the only way you stay in touch with your family is through email, maybe the occasional phone call. And if you're deployed and you're doing a mission that's very important, sometimes you can't even do that. It can go for months at a time. It's not really a normal job. My mother frequently asked why a nice Jewish boy would join the military. I remind her that she married my dad and he was in the Air Force at the time. She then reminds me that at the time he said he was getting out. Tricked her. Despite my mom's good personal experience, it's a really good question. You can't always take Shabbos off. Right? In port, we have a duty rotation, so that everyone stands the same amount of duty on a submarine. You just sometimes have to stand duty. This last Saturday, I was standing duty on the boat myself. Out to sea, every day is a work day. No one can slack off at any time because there's simply too many dangerous things when you're diving hundreds of feet below the water that anyone can just take a break at any time. Every day is a work day. You just can't take the Shabbos off. If you want to keep kosher, it's not easy. On a submarine, we have one galley, maybe 4 or 5 cooks, but only usually one or two of them are cooking at a time. They're cooking for 130 people, and everyone's going to get the same food. Okay, so it's not always easy to keep kosher. There was one time when I was underway on the Houston, we got extended at sea. I thought I'd be able to pull to port. I bought my Passover matzah well ahead of time. I had all sorts of Passover food. I was going to be good to go. I left it behind because we were getting underway in January, and I said, yep, Passover doesn't start in April. We'll be back way before then, and we got extended. There was stuff going on in the rail. They said, you got to stay out at sea. Next thing I knew, I was doing Passover at sea. And had no matzah or any with me, and just having to be very creative trying to avoid eating leavened food. Very, very difficult. I lost a lot of weight that week. You can't always get the holidays. As I said a little earlier, I had the privilege of being the navigator in Missouri a little bit earlier this year. I was given about 2 or 3 days heads up that was going to happen. All right, I'd gone to services here a few days before for Rosh Hashanah. Things were moving along. My wife and I had made certain plans. Next thing I know, my captain's telling me, hey, Missouri needs you. Going over there to getting underway on Friday. I'm looking at my watch. I'm thinking, Friday. Something important. Oh, Kol Nidre. I'll tell you, for Kol Nidre, while most people were, doing Kol Nidre in synagogue, I was coming down from the bridge and preparing to submerge the ship. All right, so I was doing a little bit of praying, but not the same kind that perhaps is going on in synagogue. So I've been underway twice on Passover. I've been underway twice for Hanukkah. It's not a normal life. It's not an easy life being Jewish. There's very few chaplains in the Navy. When I first joined the Navy, we had 6, and I was very lucky to get to go to the Naval Academy where one of them is permanently stationed. And I've got to meet I think I've met all of them now. It's not too many. That's how few there are. But now I think there's even less. Once again, it's an all-volunteer thing. We can't ask, we can't draft chaplains to join the Navy. So you get who is willing to join up. The Air Force and the Army generally are stuck with Orthodox chaplains because that's usually the only rabbis who want to join. When I was growing up in Texas, I had 4 rabbis in a row who were Orthodox. And I'm not saying anything about the Orthodox, but sometimes it's a little bit different than what the rest of us are used to. You have the boys on one side, the girls on the other. It seems a little odd. The rabbi doesn't show up for half the year because the sun sets too early and he can't even make it to synagogue. So my parents were actually lay leaders for over half the year running the services. And since I just got bar mitzvah, they drafted me to sing all the stuff. So yeah, being in the military is not always very easy. You don't even have a chaplain even when one is stationed near you, depending on what kind of Judaism they practice. We have something called the Jewish Welfare Board in the military. They're a really, really terrific group of volunteers who donate a lot of money, donate prayer books and kosher food to Jewish soldiers who are serving all over the world. When my dad was deployed to Iraq a few years ago and then again to Qatar last year, Jewish Welfare Board provided a significant amount of stuff that he was able to use and eat while he was over there. Submarine, not so much. They can't really get you stuff when you're under the water submerged. But I keep hoping. We do have things that we can do, though, in the military to try and do our best to be Jewish. We have these things called MREs, called Meals Ready to Eat. They also stand for Meals Rejected by Everyone. And they do make kosher MREs. And I'll tell you, if you thought the regular ones were bad, just wait till you have the kosher ones. Sometimes you can't get time off. And when I'm in port and I have the opportunity, there's always a message that comes out from the Chief of Naval Operations, our top naval officer, that says, these Jewish holy days are about to occur, and you will give your servicemen who you can the time off. And I've always taken full advantage of that. I've always submitted a special liberty chit or whatever I can. And my command has always been very good about giving me that time off. Being Jewish in the military is like being in your own very tiny community. When I was in Guam with my wife, we became very, very, very close to the 4 other Jews who were on the base with us. Okay? a bunch of people in the base. I'm sure there were more Jewish people than just that, but there's only 6 of us who decided that we would get together and run a service on Friday nights. We became very, very, very close. My wife still talks all the time to our friends who remained in Guam who are Jewish, but you're a tiny little community. I saw that in Texas. I saw it at the academy. I've seen it in Guam, and we would teach my wife and I helped teach their kids Hebrew. I found it a very rewarding experience, but when you get into a Jewish community that is that small, you become very, very tight. It's one of the most rewarding things about being Jewish and being in the military. I told you a little earlier that my grandfather on my mom's side had liberated death camps in World War II. It was an experience he rarely ever talked about. And he still had nightmares of it 50 years later before his death. But listening to some of the things that he occasionally said about that experience told me how important it was that as a Jewish person I needed to serve. Because not everyone around the world enjoys the same freedoms, same kind of freedom of religion and freedom from being persecuted because of religion that we enjoy in the United States. When my dad was in Iraq for the first time, which was before the fall of Saddam Hussein, he was a UN weapons inspector, he was talking to another Iraqi who did not know that he was Jewish. And this Iraqi said that all the problems in the world stemmed from Jewish people. And this guy's name was not Mel Gibson. But, my dad had to stand there and just listen to this guy just go on a rant about, America would not be after Iraq if it wasn't because of the Jews. And that, the whole world would just be a better place if there were no Jews. Okay? And, unfortunately, in my travels, I've sometimes seen that as well. Going to a place like Singapore, places in the middle of Asia where you don't think they would even know who Jewish people are. There's a significant amount of anti-Semitism out there. It makes serving, in my opinion, worthwhile knowing that there are those kind of threats in the world. Therefore, some of us need to take the time to serve our country for a few years, or 20, or 30, and be there to protect our freedoms. I have a 10-month-old son, like the rabbi said. I've only seen him for about 5 or 6 months, at the most. Most nights when I'm working on the ship, I don't get home until after he's asleep. And I was underway for 3 to 4 months on the Missouri, so I didn't get to see him during that time either. And I miss him more than I could possibly imagine. But if you ask me if I would do this again, if I would join the military, if I would make these kind of sacrifices, if I do a job that takes me away from my wife and my family, as much as it does, I would tell you I would do it again in a heartbeat. Because what we have is very special. The fact that all of us can sit in this room and have this kind of conversation is special. And I would do it in a heartbeat, and so would 1,000 others, Jewish people who serve in the military. So I would tell you that not all of you have to serve, not all of you have to serve in our military. There's certainly many other ways that you can somehow serve our country in different ways that will help the Jewish people out over the entire world. But I encourage you, as you go on, to think of those Jews who are serving our military and take the time to protect all of our freedoms. Thank you.
We have time for a question or two. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know how many Jewish people are serving in the military in total? Is there a figure? Do they have that figure? Somebody must have it.
If somebody does have that figure, ma'am, to be directly honest, I don't.
That's fine. That's okay. I was just wondering.
I would say, though, based on my personal experience, it's usually about 1 to 2% of the military. So probably 3,000, 4,000, maybe 5,000.
Yes.
I was in the Navy in 1945, stationed at Great Lakes, and a notice came out, all the Jewish boys, it was young kids, all the Jewish boys in the Navy to go to a certain field at Great Lakes. About 200 of us came out, and they had a big platform, and the famous cello player at that time named Yasha Zaidi was in the Navy. He played the Kol Nidre, and it was a short sermon. And then one of the Navy officers said, all you 200 boys, turn around and look. We turned around, and there were wooden poles with telephones on all of them. And he hollered out, call your mother. True story.
And because some of them are Orthodox, they said, we can't. It's young. Oh, that's a great story. Okay, thank you, Joel. And one last question. Okay,
My
well,
wife told me there'd be none.
okay, well, you were very informative. I think there's no questions because you covered it pretty thoroughly. But there is a tremendous commitment that you make, and we need representation of Jews in the military. And I'm sure you do run into anti-Semitism now and then. And I think the more the Jewish presence is there, probably the less that would happen. So thank you very much.
Okay, we're about to start our graduation. Unfortunately, Jerry Fisher can't be here tonight. He's in Israel. He's leading a group, and Jerry sends very special regards to you. He comes every year, doesn't miss graduation, but only because he's in Israel that he can't be here. So he wishes you all the best of luck and wanted me to pass it on to you. We're going to start our graduation in a moment. First, I'd like to call up our emissaries.